Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 86th episode this week, where we'll be recapping the last few weeks that we've been off, talking about the Patriots' new hire, new head football coach, Mike Vrabel, as well as some of the staff updates and some news around the NFL. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and X/Twitter at Pat's 300 Level Pod for up-to-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So Kevin, this is something that we've been hoping for the last 55 weeks or so, ever since it was announced that Bill was going to be out for head football coach. We were hoping we didn't want him gone, but if he was to be gone, we were really hoping it was going to be Mike Vrabel. And then last year, you actually had the opportunity where he was surprisingly fired, but they just passed on him for Gerard Mayo, which at the time, you and I both said best case scenario with Gerard Mayo is he becomes Mike Vrabel. You might as well go with the sure thing. And they passed on him. Gerard Mayo was even worse than we were expecting, and he was canned less than 52 weeks after he was hired. And then Patriots essentially just pounced on it, recognized their mistake, and hired Mike Vrabel. What are your thoughts on just the hire itself? What did you think of his press conference and his interview tour afterwards, and everything that he said so far?
Yeah, no, I think it's a slam dunk hire. I think you couldn't do really any better than this year. And everyone, there's a whole bunch of people. I feel like it's more of the younger generation, one like the Ben Johnson hire, where he's that like new, exciting offensive mind. And the big thing is you don't really know how he's going to be as a head coach.
Yep.
What is he going to look like? Is he going to be Josh McDaniels 3.0? Is it going to be Brandon Staley? Is it going to, well, Brandon Staley is a defensive mind, but is he going to be one of
Yes, same
those?
concept.
Yeah, is he going to be one of those newer guys? Mike McDaniel, I don't think he's really a good head coach. Is he going to be one of those guys that flames out because he only knows how to run an offense? He doesn't know how to run a whole team. Or is he going to be kind of Mike Vrabel, where you've got a leader and someone that knows the whole football organization and how to actually run a team and run a room and put the right people together? So that's the big kind of thing there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, we've said all year, Ben Johnson could be an excellent head coach. We've seen these offensive masterminds become great head football coaches, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. But if you had to put money on it, if you had to go with the odds percentages of how history has played out the last 10, 15 years, Ben Johnson has more of a likelihood of being the next Nathaniel Hackett than he does the next Sean McVay. Just because there's so much more to being a head coach than just calling plays. And then, especially if he is going to be a play calling head coach, which there are more and more play calling head coaches in the NFL now than there were, say, a decade ago, that takes so much of your time that you can't focus on everything else that you need to run a successful operation, which is, in my opinion, one of the many reasons why Josh McDaniels failed when he was a head coach both times around, especially the second time around. He would have thought he would have learned, but since he's focusing so much time on the play calling, especially even just in-game development, you can't really assess the need of everything else that's going on in your team, make adjustments, both offensive, defensively, special teams, as well as making critical decisions in key situations. Do you go for it on fourth down? Do you punt? Do you run a fake? What to do on defense? Do you go with an all-out blitz, etc.? Just because you're trying to focus, okay, this is a situation I have to call this play, but you can't put as much time and focus into the situation around you. But with Mike Vrabel, as we've seen, he's more of the CEO head coach, which again had that last year with Gerard Mayo. But there's a huge difference with Mayo and Vrabel. Vrabel has done it successfully in the NFL. He's coached and played in multiple situations in and outside of New England. And he's also surrounds himself with excellent coaches. He did that in Tennessee, where he had Mike LaFleur or Matt LaFleur as his offensive coordinator, lost him, picked up Arthur Smith, and even though Arthur Smith hasn't been a great head coach, he's a very good offensive coordinator, helped them get to the number one seed, make it to the AFC championship game. So he surrounds himself with great coaches so that he doesn't have to do everything and he can focus on being that leader of men. Similar to what Dan Campbell has done in Detroit, even though I think Vrabel is a better coach from the evidence we've seen. Campbell has done well the past couple of years, but he also has a very talented roster and great coordinators. We'll see how he does next year without them. But Vrabel has shown he is one of the smartest coaches in the NFL, knows the rules better than everyone. Uh, that's the comparisons to Bill, but he can also relate to the players, and he has a different style to Bill, even though he has that same intelligence of assessing and attacking opponents.
And another thing that I think I really liked about even the press conference from Vrabel was that he wants to why am I blanking on what he wants to eliminate? Oh, he wants to eliminate entitlement, and I think that was a huge thing. That was probably the thing that I think everyone liked the most that had watched it. Where you just watched this team last year, and it's nothing like the Patriots that we're used to watching, and the Patriots really that are known over the last 20 years, where they're hard workers and that you don't really blame anyone else for the position and you do your own job and you focus on that and then you can succeed that way. Last year, it was pretty much entitlement through from the coaches down to the players, where the coaches were even after they were fired, supposedly there were reports saying that how they were flabbergasted, saying that they thought that they had 3 years to like get this done. And yeah, it does make sense by saying, oh, you need time sometimes to have a program and see it go through. But when it was this much of a disaster, you're not getting 3 years. You're not guaranteed anything. That's the
Yep.
big thing. It's the NFL. You're not guaranteed to play. You're not guaranteed to have your job next year. You have to kind of go out and show it, and they didn't. And I think that was a huge thing that Vrabel was saying, where they need to eliminate the entitlement, where it starts from coaches down to players, and by putting that right in there, I think it's going to set the right expectations and not have kind of the softness that we saw last year throughout the whole organization. So that was something I really liked as well.
Yep.
And
Agreed
again,
completely.
one other thing too, which we had talked about in the last podcast, what Bill Walsh thought would be a successful coach is someone that knows how to coach every single position, and that's something we talked about last time, where Vrabel has taken this last year to learn more about the offensive side, to kind of increase his repertoire there, so that way he's not just this defensive coach, but he has that offensive background, and that he started at the offensive line, and that's really what the Patriots need. Helping and really any team that needs to be successful it's a cliche, but it's won by the trenches. If you don't have a good offensive line, if you don't have a good defensive line, you're not going to win. So that's something I think the Patriots are going to need to focus on. We're going to get into another episode, like what their needs are and what they're going to be looking for. But that's one big thing what they need to focus on, and I think that kind of shows what his thoughts are.
Yep. And another thing too was just the focus on situational football. And one thing he said, I don't think it was during the press conference, but one of the interviews afterwards was he wants the Patriots to be good enough where they can capitalize on bad football. The margin of error is so small in the NFL where there's a lot of bad football, especially lately. And I think part of it is just less practice time, but also I feel like the coaches are getting worse and worse each year, which is part of the reason why the Chiefs are always so successful lately is that Andy Reid, even though he's not probably the top three coach of all time, he's so much better than almost every other coach out there that other coaches crap their pants like they used to versus Bill, and he also knows how to capitalize on it too, where they're not making mistakes, they're not making penalties in key situations, and even if you're not the best team, if you if other teams are making those mistakes or you're forcing them, you're able to if you're able to capitalize on them, you can win, and that's something that the Patriots haven't been able to do the last couple of years, especially this past year.
Yep. No, agreed. Anything else on the Vrabel signing? I feel like we've talked about him a lot in this
Yep.
past year, of why he should be hired, why he should have been
Yeah.
hired, why they should hire him, why they should have hired him, and then why they need to fire Mayo and then hire him. So I feel
It
like
seemed like every episode.
it seems like every episode lately we've been kind of talking about him. So I don't think there's really much else to really discuss other than just our kind of excitement for just real adults in the program again, where
Yeah.
someone that actually has a clue of what they're doing and isn't just these vague corporate kind of buzzwords that he's throwing out.
Yep.
He actually has a vision of what he wants to see. And
Why'd you stop it?
I don't
Hmm.
know. I accidentally stopped that for a second. But all right, next thing. Josh McDaniels being the offensive coordinator. This is something that I'm really excited about. I think you
Me
are.
too. I am. But he's who I wanted.
Yeah, he's exactly who I wanted. We actually posted weeks ago, back in December, that a dream of ours would be Vrabel and McDaniels together. And I at that time I wasn't feeling great about my dream, but I was like, maybe it might happen. And it did. So I think this entire kind of off season is really going to plan for me. Um, and the only thing that'll make it a little bit better is that they can draft Andre Carter. Carter,
Abdul
whoever,
Carter.
Abdul Carter, at number four. But I think McDaniel's was the perfect person for this job. Everyone was saying, "Oh, we want this tight pants guy, is West Coast offense, Sean McVay," and you don't really know what you're getting. And again, the other person that Vrabel kind of wanted, other than Josh, was Reese from the Browns. They ended up promoting him so that way he couldn't come here. And then really, who else is out there that you really want that actually has experience? Everyone else you're making a guess on. Everyone else has a high chance of maybe flaming out. And then the other thing is you're going to have to entrust them to run the offense, and are you going to have to spend more of your time with that person to develop them, than kind of oversee the whole team, and then kind of put these mini fire drills out rather than and do that? Are you going to be able to spend your time with him, and then you won't be able to put some of those other fire drills out? Um, and then what happens if he's not any good?
Yeah.
You do, right now they're not at the point where they can take that chance of
Yep.
having someone not be good, and kind of then you're on another offensive coordinator the following year. You saying Josh McDaniels was the safe and like lazy pick, I also don't think is right, because I think he was basically the best person out there for any job. Um, Everyone is always kind of up about, oh, with this West Coast offense, we need this really bright, shiny new thing. Well, the West Coast offense isn't this new offense. Some of the new wrinkles that they put in there with the motions and that sort of stuff is, but the West Coast offense has been around for a while. And to say which one's more quarterback friendly, the Earnhardt Perkins offense is actually more quarterback friendly than the West Coast offense is, because it gives you the checks that you can make at the line, and you're not basically with the West Coast offense, you run the play that's given and that's all you run. You can't really make
Yep.
any changes. And if it's a bad play, you're kind of stuck with a bad play. Um, And I think some of the time away, I feel like I'm talking a ton right now, but I feel like some of the
Sure.
time away that Josh has taken this past year is that he spent time at Ohio State and other schools to kind of learn some more of the new modern wrinkles that colleges are doing, so that way he could implement in his game. Um, I'm going to
Yeah.
stop
And that.
talking because I feel
Yep.
like I've talked a lot, and then there's a couple other things I want to talk about him, but I feel like I could talk about Josh forever, so I'll let you go.
Yeah. No. I think, like you said, a lot of people are saying it's a safe pick, which it probably is. But I also think he was the best guy for the job. Where one thing you didn't mention is, if you're not going with him, likely you're going with someone that's one of the younger coordinators, and there's a high likelihood that if they're successful, which may happen because Drake May is so good, you'll likely lose him in a year or two, and you have to go with another coordinator, which may have to be a different scheme or another coordinator that's learning the new Patriot scheme. So it's going to be foreign and have some issues in it. So that's the thing where going with McDaniels, he's already failed horrendously twice as head coach. He's not getting another head coaching job. So you have him in the bank for the next 10 plus years, assuming that everything works and is successful. Plus, also, he adapts his offense. I know a lot of people are saying he was carried by Brady, but in 2000 or 28, 2008, they won 11 games with Matt Castle. And I know it was a loaded roster that went undefeated the year before, but it was still a quarterback that hadn't had real snaps since high school 8 years before. In 2020, um, with Cam Newton, they won 7 games. They had some games where they're actually pretty good offense. 2021, they were sixth highest scoring offense in the NFL with Mac Jones as your quarterback. Even in 2016, when Brady was out the first 4 games, Jimmy G looked like Tom Brady the first week and a half until he got hurt, like he always does. And then Jacoby Brissett beat a loaded Houston Texans team that was projected to win. And Jacoby Brissett was a rookie who ended up getting traded the next year. And we've seen what Jacoby Brissett is as a quarterback. So he's had success without Tom Brady. Obviously, his best success was with Tom Brady, which is no surprise, but he's shown how he can adapt the offense in 2020 with Cam Newton. It was a completely different offense that they ran than when Tom Brady was here. Even with Mac Jones, he slowed Mac Jones along, and then Mac Jones developed more and more until when they started getting later in the season and they had to entrust more on him in order to be successful. Mac Jones just couldn't handle it. But Josh has shown that he can be a great coordinator, a great play caller, and great developer of players. So I'm all for the hire. And then one thing you were saying about the West Coast offense versus the Earnhardt offense is it is tougher on the quarterbacks in the beginning, especially if it's something they're not used to, because it's different schematically, different play calling and terminology. But once you get to that threshold, say year two, year three, and you actually fully grasp everything, then it's so much easier and you can run a better offense because you have so much more control, like you were saying. It definitely will be tougher in the first year or two for Drake May, but once he gets all that under his belt and learns, it should be better for the Patriots offense going forward because then Drake, assuming that he's not Justin Herbert, he can see what the defense is playing in front of him. He can make the adjustments accordingly, and then they can run their offense as efficiently as possible.
Yep. And that's the other thing too is we actually have no idea right now what offensive scheme they're going to be running. There's a chance that Josh could be scrapping everything and running a West Coast offense. So,
Yeah.
and I think if anyone's to do that, he's smart enough to be able to do that. And I have all the faith in the world that he would be able to run really whatever Vrabel wants him to run and whatever Drake could be comfortable with and thinks that he would
Yep.
succeed with. And if you listen to him on the Julian Edelman podcast months ago, one of the things that he was talking about was discussing about how to develop a quarterback and really developing really anyone. And he was really cognizant of how to do that and making sure you don't overfill. First of all, he says that you start off with a cup and then you got to fill up your cup. And then once you are able to fill your cup, then you get to a bigger cup. And then eventually you get to a bucket by the time like you're a certain kind of year in. So it's something that he really kind of grasps and knows and doesn't just try and throw everything at someone. Um, and he really understands the development of a quarterback. So that's the other
And
thing
we
too.
saw that rookie year with Mac Jones too.
Yeah,
That's exactly what we saw, which is
yeah.
why Mac Jones was successful the first half of the season because
Hmm.
they didn't entrust as much on him.
Yep. And then the other thing too with Josh that you're getting is someone that knows how to develop quarterbacks. Some of these other guys that were out there, they weren't quarterback kind of developers. They were like tight ends coaches, wide receivers coaches. I really wanted someone that had that quarterback experience because that way he knows how to tailor the offense and run the offense through the quarterback. That's really
Yep.
the most important thing with Drake right now. And really everyone else out there didn't really have it that weren't experienced already. The only coordinator I could have possibly been convinced on if Josh wasn't available. Well, not really. Well, the only other one, if Josh wasn't available, you could have talked me into Clint Kubiak. He's probably
Yep.
the best one that was out there right now. They're saying Eric Bieniemy was the a high interview with the Patriots. I don't really know why.
Yeah.
He's really kind of flamed out everywhere
Who's
he's
the one that
gone.
actually reported that though?
I'll have to find out and see, but it was
Because it
like
might have
multiple
not been an actual
places.
reputable report, depending on who it was. But
No, it was like there was someone real that reported it. It was at least Mark Daniels. Um, that reported it. But
anyway, like
anyway,
again, we don't have to harp on this too much, but like you said, I think McDaniels was the best case scenario. He's had success. He's had success here. He's had success with quarterbacks, grown quarterbacks, even outside of Brady. You could look at all the other quarterbacks that have come through the system and been successful, even if they're not Pro Bowl or All Pro
mhm,
quarterbacks. He's turned them into serviceable quarterbacks, even like backup fringe starters like Jacoby Brissett, Brian Hoyer, Ryan Mallett, but even Jimmy Garoppolo, who he essentially turned into $100 million quarterback. Matt Castle was a Pro Bowl player, which is it's insane to think that Matt Castle sat behind Matt Leinart and Carson Palmer, both Heisman Trophy winners, and had
mhm,
more winning or career earnings than the NFL than either of them.
mhm. I didn't even think of that. Even more than Carson Palmer.
Yep.
Oh, wow, It's actually surprising. All right. Next, Ryan Cowden. So everyone was always well, that one of the big questions for us would be, well, not really a big question. I think I even mentioned his name that he was going to be coming over with Vrabel if Vrabel was to be hired. But one of the big things after the press conference was Elliot Wolf not being fired. And I'm not concerned still about Wolf being in the building. Especially with Cowden being brought over. One of the big things is right now, you really need. There's only what two. There wasn't really any time between when everyone was fired and when like the Senior Bowl, which starts actually this week,
And
and then
then the
you have
Shrine
all
Bowl, East West Shrine Bowl
yeah, and
too.
then you have the East West Shrine Bowl, and then you have all your scouting activities that are done throughout the next few months. It's much easier to keep kind of that scouting department in line through the draft. And that's what really happens most commonly. Usually they'll sometimes blow out the GM, but they'll usually keep everyone else in line because you can't replace everyone.
Yep.
Um, that that's why Bill always says the first draft is usually the worst with a new regime, just because you're relying on all these other people that you may not end up actually keeping. They're using different
Yep.
systems, that sort of thing. Um,
One caveat is if people hear that and then say, "Oh, why did Mayo not get the benefit of the doubt?" Every single person in the front office was already here, so it's not
yeah,
like it was all new people brought in. So just
100. Yeah,
besides the point. I
yeah.
just wanted to throw
Yeah,
that in there.
so
But
that's why I'm not concerned about
yeah,
Wolf. I think really realistically after April, May, we're probably not going to see him. He may not be fired. The Patriots back in 2000 when Bill was brought in, they had basically the two people. There was the guy that ran the cap, which I'm blanking on his name because he had a really long name. It was
something with a W.
something with an S and like a Wits or something like that.
Okay.
And then there was the GM, which I don't know why I'm also blanking on his name because
Greer.
I've tweeted. Yeah, Greer,
Greer.
Bobby Greer. Um, and Bobby Greer was kept on for the first few months, and then he was blown out after the draft. And then the other guy, who was the cap manager beforehand, when Bill took over as the coach, they ended up taking away the cap managing from his roles and
Andy
responsibilities.
Wazaniski.
Yeah, Indy wasn't. I think Wasanowski. Um, yeah, that's the guy, Andy. And then Andy was the cap manager before Bill, and he ended up staying on with the Patriots organization till I think 2005. But through those 5 years, he didn't hold any title that was actually really in anything football related. He
Yep.
was responsible for the stadium kind of plans when they were building Gillette. He ran some other programs too, but they basically have some other kind of random projects. That way, they wouldn't have to fire him and pay him money to do nothing. So that's why I wouldn't
And
be.
one thing too that helps give you solace is that Vrabel has final say over the roster.
Hmm.
So even if Wolf is still here, if there's someone that he wants, Vrabel has final say. Plus, with Cowden being here too, it'll essentially be Vrabel will trust Cowden more than Wolf. So even though Wolf has the higher title, if
Hmm.
Cowden says, "I want Abdul Carter at 4," and then Wolf says, "I want Campbell," but Vrabel wants Abdul Carter, they'll
Hmm.
draft Abdul Carter.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's always going to be two against one, and then Cowden's there basically be the guy that runs everything,
yep.
and make sure that Vrabel gets what he wants. Because the thing is that everyone always talks about, even with Bill, by saying Bill was a bad general manager. You look at Bill's drafts, and you
Bill is
look
the
over.
as Pat McAfee always says, Bill was the
Hmm.
greatest general manager of all time.
Exactly.
I will die on that hill. I will fight, argue anyone
Hmm.
till I'm blue in the face. A lot of people cherry pick different stats of
Different
different
drafts,
drafts,
yeah.
different rounds, etc.
Hmm.
But if you look at Bill's holistic drafting and
Overall.
compare it to
Hmm.
any other GM, it
Hmm.
wins hands down. If you look at Bill's undrafted free agent history versus any other GM,
Hmm.
if you look at his trade acquisition free agency, especially no names or people that flamed out in other organizations that were draft high and then flourished in New England.
Hmm.
Bill has a talent and knack of finding diamonds in the rough throughout, and he always has.
Yep. What I was trying to talk about was you
Sorry.
see some of the picks kind of recently that were cherry picked, and you look at like Tyquan Thornton, and everyone knows that that was a macro guy. He talks about the speed, all that sort of stuff. You look at the last 4 years, and really kind of some of the things that changed were just the collaboration, that sort of thing. And you look at the people that are here, and you look at this past draft, and you kind of compare some of the losers that the ones that didn't work out that Bill had. There were a lot of similarities to the drafts that was for this year. And you look at who was in place this year versus who was in there, and it was the same people. So that was just one of the things where um, I just really don't think that Wolf would stay here in a great capacity for much longer. So I'm
No,
not
that's fair.
I'm not concerned. And we'll kind of go on for that. Other staff notes. They hired defensive coordinator Terrell Williams.
So
Is from.
I do want to talk about Terrell Williams for a minute before I don't want to just briefly go over him. So
Hmm.
he was with he started his career in college, was in college for over a decade at different colleges, and then he went to the Raiders for 2 years, Miami for 3 years, Tennessee under Vrabel, and then Vrabel liked him so much that he gave him a title boost of assistant head coach. Then he went to Detroit for a year, and then he's here. One thing that really concerns me, I'm glad that Vrabel likes him, trust him a lot. But if you look at his coaching, he's coached college or the NFL since 1998, so 27 years, 28 years. He's only coached the defensive line. He hasn't
Hmm.
coached linebackers, hasn't coached secondary. So that's just my one concern with going for a defensive coordinator where you have to know coverages, you have to know all the ins and outs. So he's been literally from 1998 through 2023 just defensive line coach. In 2024, he was also, in addition to being defensive line coach, he was also the run game coordinator. But that's just one thing that does give me a little concern of him being the full defensive coordinator.
That was one of my concerns too when I first saw it. There's been I don't know where I saw it, but there's some speculation that Vrabel would maybe be calling the defense, or at least he's definitely gonna have a big input in it.
Yeah.
Just like how big Bill had a big input in the kind of defensive scheme. So that part doesn't make me as concerned. Whereas you look at last year, not only did Covington have no real experience to kind of lean on, and Mayo didn't either. At least Vrabel can has run a defense and knows how to run a
Yeah.
defense.
So yeah, so
Um,
that's one of the things too. I just want to see what you thought, but
yeah.
like last year, Covington didn't have anyone. He essentially had to do the game planning, or like him and Mayo never did game planning before.
Hmm.
Vrabel, I'm sure, will have a big impact
Hmm.
input onto the actual game planning.
Yeah.
But again, you hear a lot from, especially defensive coordinators, how important coaching the secondary is. Julian Edelman's podcast today came out with Matt Patricia, and he was talking about how him coaching the secondary was a big step for him. And then also when he was defensive coordinator, I forgot if it was actually with title or not, he moved outside of the safety position. He was coaching safeties and being defensive coordinator, but he has to be able to get rid of that title so that Brian Flores could become the safety coach so he could start that for his trajectory of eventually becoming a defensive coordinator so he
Hmm.
could have that secondary experience instead of just being, I believe, a linebacker coach at the time.
Yeah, and that's something I've talked about too, where with Covington, which why he may not have worked out as well is that, like you had said, most defensive coordinators don't come from the defensive line. They have that secondary experience, and with no secondary experience, it's a little concerning.
Yep.
Not as concerning just because of having a defensive coach. So that's the other thing too, where the difference between last year and this year, if it, let's say he doesn't, let's say he's allowing Williams to call the plays and run the defense. If it doesn't work out, he will take it from him if he needs
Yep.
to and run with it. Whereas last year that didn't happen at all, and I don't think he even could do it if he needed to last
Yeah.
year. So I think that's just one big difference. Doug
No, I
Marone,
agree.
offensive line coach.
I like this hire a lot. Doug
Yeah.
Marone, very successful coach, known for being a good offensive line coach. Has been a head coach in two different stints in Buffalo and then in Jacksonville. Actually had some moderate success. He did pretty well in Buffalo. I believe he brought them to. He was only there for 2 years. I believe he actually brought them to the playoffs. He was head coach 2013, 2014. Um, he quit the Bills because rumor was he wanted the Jets job and he had the inside track, but he interviewed and they didn't hire him. So he was stuck without a job, went to Jacksonville, was assistant head coach, eventually took over, and then he led them to the AFC Championship game in 2017 where they almost beat the Patriots. So he's had two different stints in the NFL as a head coach. Uh, Moderately successful compared to other coaches. Bring up when he was with Buffalo, I don't believe he didn't make the playoffs, but he went 6-10 first year and then 9-7 the next year and was projecting upwards.
Mhm.
But very well known for being an offensive line coach, had a lot of success, and that's something that the Patriots really need is to build their offensive line.
Yep. And then two assistants, no notable assistants, gone that wanted to go over because everyone else kind of knows about the rest. Covington obviously is gone too. But Brian Belichick and Mike Pellegrino gone. Brian Belichick, safeties coach. Pellegrino was the corners coach. I think these are the two kind of coaches that we've all kind of spoken really highly of that have done really
Yeah.
well for this team,
Yep.
especially Pellegrino. Pellegrino has developed a ton of cornerbacks
Yep.
for the Patriots. Even look at Alex Austin as
That's what
kind
I
of
was
the
just gonna
latest
say.
example. And then even Brian Belichick, everyone always talks about how smart he is and thinking that actually he may be kind of the next head coach from that tree of the Belichicks by how
Yeah,
bright
even
he
over
is.
Steve.
Yeah, that he's able to kind of relate more with players. He has that defensive mind and is supposed to be really smart. So, really kind of sad to see those two guys go. They're really good coaches. They'll have no trouble kind of catching on anywhere else.
Yep.
Brian's probably going to go to Chapel Hill with Bill, I would assume. Pellegrino will be interesting to see where he goes. Does he want to kind of
Yeah.
continue his career in the NFL? Does he want to stay with the Belichicks and then kind of go from there? It'll be interesting to see. Um, Let's wish him the best of luck because whoever gets him is going to get a really good coach.
Yeah, I was really sad to see him go. I could have seen both of them actually staying on, but according to reports, it seems like they were open to staying on, but just both sides couldn't finalize or come to agreement. Not sure if it was ultimately Vrabel saying no or just thought that it wasn't the best fit.
Mhm.
Mutual parting of the ways.
Yep. All right. Some thoughts on some of the coaching hires. Real quick thoughts on each of them. Bears. Not Brian Johnson. Ben Johnson. What are your
Yep.
thoughts?
It makes the most sense. He was trying to find the best fit for him. And last year, he turned down the Washington Commanders job, which in retrospect looks like a bad decision, but no one was expecting the Commanders to be good for Jaden Daniels to have as good of a year. Plus, also, they're kind of bare bones, but with Adam Adam Peters or Scott Peters, I always get them mixed up. The new
Adam
general
Peters.
manager, he did a really good job building the roster. But the Bears seemed like the best fit, best overall position just because you have a talented roster. Ryan Poles, I think, is a bad GM because he built a talented roster, but he didn't build a good team. So he
Hmm.
has talent everywhere, especially on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of weapons with Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore. You have Cole Kmet at tight end, but it's kind of a team that's built for a dome playing in Chicago winter weather, with Lambeau also being in the same division where you have to play there once a year too. So for someone that's as good of an offensive coach, you have the weapons to potentially build your roster. I don't know if I trust Ryan Poles enough to get him the players that he needs, but he at least has the pieces. And then if he can hire a good defensive coordinator, they have the pieces on defense too, where the Bears could be successful, but a lot of it's going to depend on Caleb Williams and if he can pan out. After this first year, it's not looking great, but we have seen players take that step year or two. And then Caleb has a ton of talent. I think a lot of it is just in between the ears. And it's going to
Hmm.
depend on is he going to be able to put it together? We'll have to wait and see. And I think Ben Johnson's success is ultimately going to ride on it. I wouldn't be shocked if he fails, but I think he can be successful.
Yeah, I think really the best position for him would have actually been the Patriots
Yeah.
coming in, picking his own GM, and then
If he picked his own GM.
Yeah, if they even let him. They obviously weren't going to go the Ben Johnson route. They weren't going to go two first-time head coaches in a row. I wouldn't have either. The Bears were definitely the best place for him. Um, I was actually wondering when it was kind of getting before the news was that he was going to take the Bears job. I was wondering if he would even take any job this year. Where
Yeah.
I thought maybe he would hold out for a even better job where he would be able to get his own GM and have a good situation where you have
The
a
thing
good
with that though
quarterback. The thing
is,
is, you never have a perfect situation come
yeah,
out because if
if
there is a
there's a head
perfect
coaching
situation,
vacancy,
they're
there's
not leaving unless
yeah,
it's
if
Andy
there's a
Reid
head coaching
retiring.
vacancy, there's a reason why there's a head coaching vacancy.
Yeah.
So you're likely not going to get a talented quarterback where, even though some people aren't fully buying into Caleb, I think everyone sees the talent he has,
Hmm.
and he was the number one pick in the draft for a reason. So it just depends on if you can hone in on that. But
Yeah.
again, if he didn't trust Ryan Poles, then yeah, I could have seen him not taking that job.
Yeah. So they're definitely gonna have to bolster their offensive line. That was probably their biggest issue besides some of the coaching, and then Caleb
Yeah,
Williams had.
have to get
Um,
another running back too to team with
yeah.
DeAndre Swift.
I think he's not going to work out just because
Yeah,
the odds are in my favor that he's not going to work out
yeah,
because most head coaches that are hired do not make their full year
yep.
contract. But it was just really the one thing that kind of sold me on my take that he's probably going to fail is just how awkward he looked when
Yeah.
he was kind of being introduced to the organization and then even the press conference. There's something off, I feel like.
He also seems too fake.
Hmm.
Where like when he came in, I know McAfee talked about it, but like everyone was like standing clapping, just like get back to work, like as a
Hmm.
joke. Or when he was like, I wanted to stay in the NFC East so I could beat Matt LaFleur twice a year, and
Yeah.
like stuff like that. Like I think that's a bad look for me. Like I can see that definitely coming back to bite him in the ass, but
Yeah.
like it just seems like too fake or too cocky or a combination of both. But
Yeah. All right. Jets, Aaron Glenn. This is your second, third prediction that was right as well. You were on a good hot streak, four in a
I
row
was to
for,
start,
and
and then
then
all
the
downhill
rest
from
of it
there.
all went downhill. Although one of them is basically the same person. So Aaron Glenn, I really don't have any thoughts.
Yeah.
I think whoever takes his job isn't going to. If Woody Johnson keeps running the team the way he's running it, it's not going to do well.
Yeah.
Although the one thing with Woody is that he does seem like he wants to win,
Yep.
and he's willing to spend and put resources there. It's just they don't put the resources in the right place.
Yep.
So if he's going to let Glenn make the decisions and give him the full backing, I just don't know because like
Yeah.
what are you gonna get? I do think Rodgers is actually gonna be better this year. I think you could see kind of those spurts from him towards the end of the year last year, and I think he really needed that full year of recovery from the full extra year of recovery for the Achilles because he is 40 something, 41 years old coming off an
Yep.
Achilles. It takes at least a year usually for most people, let alone someone at that age. So I think he's actually going to do better. They're probably going to keep him for another year, maybe, and then kind of see from there. If not, if they don't have a quarterback, they're kind of boned. But I
Yeah.
don't know. We'll
So
see.
they have, it's not a horrendous place to take a head coaching job because you have talent on the roster. Again, I haven't looked at the cap situation, but I know there's a lot of guys that they got to appease Rodgers,
Hmm.
Marquez Valdez Scanling, some of the people from the Packers, etc. But you have some really great pieces with Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, and then Sauce Gardner on defense. You have some other pieces on defense too. He's played for the Jets. He's been successful. A lot of people out of Detroit rave about him. So it seems like it's a good fit, good scenario for both sides. Again, I have no idea how he's going to pan out. Typically, Jets suck. So they always find the worst head coach. So history isn't on his side, but I think he has a chance to be good.
Hmm. All right. Next one of your other correct ones, was Liam
Cohen.
Cohen, of the formerly of the Bucks. A very interesting story about him
Yep.
declining the job, getting a salary increase, and then ghosting the Bucks to take the Jaguars job.
Him
Um,
declining the job forced Khan to fire their GM Balk,
mhm, yeah.
which too is a huge win for the Jags.
Yeah.
But
I think
I
he's gonna fail just because we don't. I wish I have a way to clip this in, but it's gonna be this. The Duval,
yeah,
very, very weird um, presentation style by him
yeah,
there, and he just looks so odd.
yeah.
Um,
So
it
I have a couple of thoughts on him. One thing that concerns, it's a pro and a con, is he's coached at a lot of different places and a lot of different positions. It's a pro because he has that experience. It's a con or negative because
he never
I don't.
stayed anywhere for more than two
Yeah, he
years.
can't. It seems like he can't make up his mind. So just looking at his coaching career, he starts at Brown. He's quarterback coach at Brown for a year. Then he goes to URI, Go Rody, where he was the passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach for a year. Then he goes back to Brown to take the same position he had before as Brown as the quarterback coach. Then goes to UMass to be their passing game coordinator and quarterback coach. Then goes to Maine to be offensive coordinator. Then goes to the Rams to be assistant wide receivers coach for 2 years, 2018 and 19. In 2020, he's the Rams assistant quarterback coach. 21, he's Kentucky's offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. 22, he's the Rams offensive coordinator. 23, he goes back to college, goes back to Kentucky. Even though he's the offensive coordinator in the NFL under Sean McVay, he goes back to college and not even SEC. Kentucky, or I guess they are. Is Kentucky SEC?
Oh,
I forgot what, but it's still not a top college football program to be their offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, which he had that same position 2 years ago, to go to be the Bucks offensive coordinator in 24, and now he's the Jacksonville Jaguar head coach in 25. But something on that's a positive for him is he made Baker Mayfield look like a starting NFL quarterback, which I think Baker's trash. So that's some. And I'm not the
Baker has
biggest.
shown everything that I thought he was going to be and could have been, and this is what
eh,
why Bill Belichick
how's he done in the
loves Baker
playoffs?
Mayfield.
How's he done in the playoffs? How's he done in
They
big games?
he did do well with the Browns first.
He was hurt that game.
Yeah, they almost made it to they almost won too.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm not the biggest fan of Baker Mayfield, but he's made him look like he can be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. So he's also Liam Cohen is from Warwick, Rhode Island. So always have to root for fellow Rhode Islanders. But again, I don't think he's gonna be successful. But I think Jacksonville isn't a terrible situation. They have cap space. They have weapons on offense. It just depends on if he can turn Trevor Lawrence into a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, which with his history, at least with Baker, he's made Baker look good. If he can do that with Trevor Lawrence, he can be successful. If he can't, then he's screwed.
Yep.
But they're also in a pretty crappy division. Crappy, not for him, crappy as in Titans suck, Colts suck. So that should be 4 wins a year at least. Texans are going to be tough, but he can at least do well from that perspective.
Yep. All right. Then the Cowboys with Brian Schottenheimer is the most Cowboys pick of all head
Yep.
coaches. The only we predicted, I think, Kellen Moore. I think, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Because he used to be their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's the same exact person though.
Yeah.
It's just someone that Jerry Jones can control, someone that he's not threatened by. It's just the prototypical Cowboys pick of a head coach, and shows why Jerry Jones is a complete fraud. Where he says he's this big spending Texan, and he wants to put everything he can so he can win. And he doesn't. He's one of the cheapest owners out there, and he always hires these coaches that stink, and these coaches that are these middlers that he can control. And there's nothing really to like about this hire. Um, it's just a joke.
Yeah.
They could have had Bill Belichick last year, or this year, and they didn't. And he just never will do what's really necessary to win.
Nope. Agreed.
All right, Pete Carroll Raiders. I actually think this is a really good hire for them, just because they really need a reset of their structure and their kind of culture there. I
Agreed.
think Pete's the guy to do that. Uh, I think Bill maybe could have done it too, but
I
Bill's.
don't think Bill would have touched that with a
Well,
10
yeah, I
foot
was gonna
pole
say I would never
because
touch that place of because they don't have a quarterback, and I don't trust Al Davis.
yeah, Mark Davis. But
Same
also
person.
they're pretty barren roster. They have a couple pieces here and there with Brock Bowers, Max Crosby, but it's the toughest division in football with arguably three of the top five coaches with
Hmm.
Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and Sean Payton. And you have two of the top five quarterbacks in the NFL with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, plus Bo Nix, who had a really good rookie year. So there's almost
Hmm.
no chance of you winning that division. So it was pretty much a no-go from the start.
Hmm.
I think Carroll's the best fit for the organization to help turn it around. I don't think he'll be successful in, say, winning a Super Bowl or maybe they sneak into the playoffs one year, but I think he could be successful in building a new culture for the next coach. Or if they do somehow get a quarterback, then maybe they can be successful. But they're not going to be
Hmm.
able to take one this year. They're not going to be able to take one in free agency, so they'll have to wait until next year, the earliest. One
Well, they
that
could
will
get.
stick around as a franchise quarterback.
Oh, yeah, no. I was gonna
That's
say
what
they
they
could
they might
get.
be able to get a holdover like a Russell Wilson, maybe a Kirk Cousins if he's
Mhm.
cut, but that's going to be like a 1 year stopgap. And with that, you're not going to make it to the playoffs in that division.
Yep, no good. All right, Saints to be determined. Seems like it might be Kellen Moore though, based on a
Yeah.
lot of the reports out there. They just can't
Yeah.
hire him until after the Super Bowl.
As
Um,
bad as the Raiders' job is, the Saints' job is the worst job in the NFL because you're an absolute cap hell, and there's absolutely nothing you can do because you have so much money tied up in dead cap for the next few years. So unless you just literally cut your entire roster and just do what you and I both used to do, Madden franchise mode of just trade everyone, get all draft picks, and then essentially rebuild, which they're not going to be able to do. It's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 years of also doing things like what Denver did this past year of 40 million dead cap and Russell Wilson to just cut your losses, move on. They're going to have to do that with some of their players in order to start up and
mhm.
start the rebuild. But
Yep, I don't think maybe 6 years. They can get out of this in the next.
they're not going. They could, but they're not going to,
They're
which
not
is
going.
why I'm
That's the
saying that.
thing with them is
Yeah.
they've never shown the will, or the gut to actually do what you need to do, or they just keep
Yeah.
pushing the can down the road.
And it won't be
And
a 1 year rebuild too, because I
Mhm.
forgot. I don't know if it still applies, but I know it was like 2 years ago. If they cut their entire roster, they still didn't have enough cap space of signing everyone to the league minimum
Yeah.
because of all the dead cap and everything. So again,
Hmm.
I don't know how many years it'll take, but my guess is if you do it slowly but realistically, 4 to 6 years probably.
Yeah. All right. So that was it there. The Super Bowl predictions we can go through. Chiefs Eagles, probably the worst Super Bowl that there could have been.
Yep.
And I'm still very upset over the Bills game. Um,
But we both knew that this was going to happen. Someone said on Twitter, what's the worst case or what's the likely outcome if the Bills or the Ravens face the Chiefs? And what I said was if it's the Ravens, Lamar Jackson's going to turn into playoff Lamar and they're going to be undisciplined and have too many turnovers and penalties and lose the game. If it's the Bills, Sean McDermott's going to crap down his pants and they're going to Bills are going to lose the game. And that's exactly
mhm.
what happened.
Yep.
Horrendous coaching by Sean McDermott. Horrendous coaching by Joe Brady. Just absolutely frustrating, maddening. I'm glad I'm not a Bills fan because I'd be beyond pissed. Plus,
Yep.
the refs also screwed him too. But
They royally screwed them with that first down play. And then
and that's
even
not the only one too. There
it's
were
not there.
it
There was
was
multiple instances where there was the right tackle. I always forget his name. He does this
yeah,
all the time. He false started all the time for the Chiefs. They didn't call it once, or he
yeah,
held a bunch of times. They didn't call it. There was they called the catch that was definitely not a catch where they trapped the ball. Because the reason why I know this isn't a catch is because they claim that Hunter Henry's same thing was not a catch back in the Vikings, and that ended up screwing the
yeah.
Patriots out of the playoffs 2 years ago.
Yeah. And
And
if
they,
anything, it was more of an interception than it was a catch.
Mhm.
Plus, also not only that, there's the or the fourth down, and the play before that, the spotting was actually probably should have been
They
good
should
enough
have
for a
given him the
first down
first down.
when it
Um,
was third down.
mhm.
And then also the kick return that was like 50, 60 yards. There was two clear illegal block on the backs. So it's one thing if refs miss a call here or there, but to be just consistently one-sided is the just insane frustrating aspect. And it's been all
Mhm.
year. It's been the last 3, 4 years.
Yep. So I actually turned the game off after the missed fourth down because I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't want to get annoyed watching the rest of the game, so I ended up putting Seinfeld on. All right. So Chiefs Eagles. I really don't even want to watch this game. Chiefs are favored by a point and a half. Over under is 49.5. Saquon Barkley is our only savior for this the hope that Mahomes could lose. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to end up getting fucked. And then I think it's going to be Chiefs win 31-28, and there's going to be some sort of missed call or a call to make them win within 2 minutes, and it's going to be a big talking point for the next 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I have Chiefs winning 27-24. Again, I think the Eagles, I said this all year, I think the Eagles are the most talented team in the NFL, just 1 through 53 on both sides of the ball at pretty much all positions. They're actually healthy this year. I don't think just Jalen Hurts is good enough. If it's like turns into a shootout, I don't know if he's good enough to beat Mahomes, but I think the Eagles team as a whole is better than the Chiefs team as a whole. But I think the refs will side with the Chiefs, and I think at least once, maybe twice, when it's say 4th and 1, 4th and 2, inside the 20, inside the 30, Sirianni's going to go for it and get stopped instead of just taking the points, and they're going to lose because by 2 or 3, where if they kicked that field goal, then they would have at least tied the game or maybe won the game. So I think Sirianni's coaching is plus Jalen Hurts is going to lose the game for the Eagles.
Yep, I could definitely see that too because I also don't believe in really Hurts. There's nothing that he's really shown where he can really elevate and win. I think this whole postseason he's been really a passenger
Yeah.
on this whole thing. If they didn't have Saquon Barkley, they wouldn't be anywhere close to where they are. And it's also insane too with the Commanders how bad they played.
Yeah.
And I guess it made them really kind of fall to earth. But they really, I was just to go back to that game. I was just really pissed because I like Jane Daniels a lot. And I think the whole team failed him. But yeah, that's another thing. All right, so we will have another episode in the next coming weeks. To really kind of talk about the Patriot season as a whole, what their needs are, that sort of thing, and then we'll probably recap the Super Bowl. See if the country's on fire from the Chiefs winning 3 in a row, and then kind of start previewing the upcoming free agency and draft, that sort of thing. So everyone,
Just one thing on the 3 in a row that still makes my blood boil and pisses me
mhm,
off to this day is the refs in the NFL are the reason why the Patriots didn't win 3 in a row. In the
mhm,
2017 Super Bowl, just changing the rules on what the definition of a catch was, not calling the illegal formation on the Philly special, just that game in and of itself, the Patriots should be the first three-peat Super Bowl winner. Again, would they have
mhm.
won the next year? Maybe, maybe not. In 2018 if they won in 2017, but just knowing they won in 2016, 2018, they had the chance and should have been the first three-peat in the NFL.
Yep, agreed. All right,
And if
thank you.
AB didn't go
Mhm.
insane, they would have torpedoed the Bucks.
All right. Thank everyone. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review, and look forward to talking to you guys next time.